Hello, welcome to Time for Emerging Markets, Doers Within Emerging Markets. I'm your host, Jacob Fortune, and thank you for making the time out of your very busy schedule to listen to this podcast. This episode, I'll be talking about a Spotify original podcast called The Messenger by Dreamville. And what is really exciting about this podcast is hosted by a rapper. I know it's a podcast, promoted podcast, but it's just really inspiring. It's hosted by a rapper called Rapper Bass, BAS, that explores the Afropop superstar Bobby Wine influence in this eastern country in Africa called Uganda. And if you guys are not familiar with Uganda, it's considered the pearl of Africa, has some really amazing safaris. And I've actually been to one of the safaris in Uganda, and just a really amazing country. The premise of this podcast covers the story of Bobby Wine's transformation from a global icon that eventually, as a musician, he's originally a musician, an Afropop superstar in Uganda, that eventually spearheaded into a political uprising figure in Uganda, and he went up against the current president of Uganda, Museveni, who has led the country for the past 30 years. So you have this young guy in his late 30s having this very poverty to fame status that the politician, the people stand against a president who has led the country for 3 decades or 3 decades plus, and he's representing the people as he claims. But Baz, who is the host of the podcast, clearly stated that he's trying to use this podcast to kind of show to light the impact of Bobby Wine's influence on that country, but also how it relates to African Americans here in the United States. As someone, Bass actually grew up in New York, and the host, and he eventually, as he got older, like most of us Africans in diaspora, we began to see some connections with ourselves in Africa, and he decided to kind of create this podcast using Bobby Wine as a lens to show some of the Black history of how colonialism, the colonialism kind of relates to some of the issues that we're facing here in the United States. So it's pretty cool. I just highly recommend this podcast, and I think also encompasses what we are actually trying to do here in my own podcast here, to kind of showcase some of the inspirational people that that are actually trying to show light on emerging markets, frontier markets, from the political process to maybe entrepreneurship. But we don't want to get political here. We just want to show that people that are making a difference on the continent, to kind of bring to light some of the challenges that have been faced. Not to pick sides here. We'll not pick sides here. I think it's more about how does Baz actually look at Uganda as a country, and how hopefully eventually it can be a place where it's favorable for investments, it's favorable for entrepreneurship. So Baz recorded this of interest of saying Bobby Wine's story, who is currently, still one of the biggest challengers of Museveni, who is the current long-standing president of Uganda, of being a messenger, as a title, the messenger of the podcast. And he says this podcast will hopefully, speak out on certain things that socially have an effect on himself as well. And Baz, the host of this podcast, sees Bobby Wine as an inspiring musician that has sacrificed everything to go all the way to be a politician, and he has learned that there's bravery that comes from Bobby Wine in taking the risk to do a noble and selfless cause. So, but from Baz, who is the host of this podcast, his goal is that he wants to he wants artists to have a voice to the youth. In the first episode, which I'm still in the first episode, he shows like a contrast between Kanye West and Bobby Wine. Not necessarily a contrast, but some of like a similar thread. The both ran for president in 2021, but their view of how to navigate some of the social challenges. Kanye West coming from the US versus Bobby Wine in Uganda, they see some of the perspective of Uganda differently, based on his visit that Kanye West had with his then wife Kim Kardashian on how Uganda is viewed, and having that visit with the president of Uganda, Museveni, without really realizing that what he said and kind of what he was doing with discussing with the president didn't really necessarily address some of the challenges that most Ugandans face. And maybe he did it with no negative intentions. But Kanye West was seen as a similarity to Bob Wine because they're both artists, they're both outspoken in terms of the political, mindsets as well as the standing. So that actually showcased and the fact that they both run for president in respective countries, Kanye West in 2020 as well as Bobby Wine in 2020, it kind of showed like, you have these artists that have influence, they can have an influence to the youth, and they can, in one way or the other, bring great social impact to the community. So, so he tries to make the stories, share the stories, the struggles, and to give a perspective of how artists can be, can have a role in youth's, kind of bringing youth attention. But this podcast to check out is called The Messenger. It's on Spotify, and I felt inspired by it. Just the initial take on it, and I highly encourage you to check it out as well. So, please, feel free to check it out, and that'll be it for this episode. And thank you so much for tuning in. And please let me know if you checked out the Messenger pod. You can reach out to me. I have my contacts in the link below. Please feel free to subscribe my YouTube channel. I share all this content on YouTube, and as well as follow me here on Spotify as well. And feel free to connect any way that you seem fit for us to connect. So thank you so much, and hope you're having a great week. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.